I've seen quite a few organizations that make these really significant investments in AI strategy. We're talking 8 figures, tens of millions of pounds, but very little to show for it.
Today's guest is Liam, Managing Director at BPMD, where he transforms business processes for operational excellence. Can you share a specific moment when you realized that fixing the system was more important than jumping on the AI bandwagon, and what led to this realization?
Yeah, there's a lot of hype around AI right now, and it is a really disruptive technology. It's something that obviously is being discussed at every level across every organization. But there's a lot of parallels to some of the other technology innovations that have come along. I remember a few years ago there was RPA, Robotic Process Automation. And whilst I don't think that is as disruptive a technology as AI, I don't think it's on the same scale. It had a similar kind of hype around it. A lot of companies dove into RPA pilots, build a bot, solve this problem, prevent me from having to spend all of my life working on Excel copy and pasting. And what you found with the first 1, 2, 3, 4 use cases were easy to find, really easy to build a business case, help people to get engaged with. But then as you tried to scale it and embedded those tasks into code operations, generative engines, were there's a lot of obvious use cases that jump off the page and a lot more than RPA could get into. But it can't be led by, this is the one point problem we want to solve. Yes, AI is about solving specific problems, but you need to consider the broader business context. It's not looking at what one person does on one desk and automating that piece. What's a broader business process? Those upstream dependencies, those downstream dependencies, who's going to be affected by the input, the output, what's the risk profile, and considering the broader business process before getting into very specific point AI solutions.
Definitely, I agree, because if everyone just goes about using their own tools and they don't look at the larger context, then a lot of it could clash and you'll be doing double the work when actually you don't need to.
Definitely. Yeah, it's one thing saving people a lot of those copy and pasting from one Excel to another. It's another thing if something goes wrong, having to contact all the external parties, all the customers who've been affected, and having to go back into the ERP and undo those deletes, undo those overwrites, and try to fix a problem. So there's got to be that consideration as well. A really interesting space. There's some problems in a business, some pain points AI can fix. A really common one is invoice matching or mismatching. When the PO doesn't match the GI, doesn't match the invoice, and it feels like a finance problem, going through those invoices and trying to work out why there's a mismatch. Maybe AI could help with managing those mismatches. You could build it. But the problem is probably upstream, usually with selling teams, procurement teams, the ones right at the front end doing the buying and selling. Some of that data in wrong, and that wrong data filtering through and causing that mismatch downstream. So you need to look at a broader process, fix the problems, not just say that your value proposition is AI. Understand the problems, fix the problems. AI is a tool to do that.
Engaging with all stakeholders is very key. Describe a time when you implemented strategies to ensure systems were robust before integrating AI solutions. What was the situation and what steps did you take?
Historically, we've done a lot of process work in preparation for major digital transformations, be that back in the day doing RPA prep, be it prepping for an ERP change like bringing in S4HANA, or increasingly now it's about finding opportunities for AI agents to be embedded into your workflow. The same principles hold across all of them. Understanding process, who's involved, what are those roles, what is the data dependencies, what are the people dependencies. I think a good example of this was with a professional services and insurance broker, where essentially what it was is a process about matching records from one person to another, and you have to go through historic records and match it to the case. That can be quite a manual undertaking, and it's got an insurance medical element to it, so it's a high risk profile. The obvious idea is bring in AI, maybe IDP, intelligent document processing, which is, if you think of OCR, optical character recognition, it's like an eye, it takes a picture and tries to match. IDP is like an eye with a brain. It takes a picture and tries to work out what's on there so it can match fields. And there's a lot of manual work matching these documents. But there's a broader problem. Where's the data coming from? What's the preface to this? We're taking notes, making sure they've got the right client in the scientific case. Is this something where you can begin to thin down the number of records to search to match? If you said, let's do IDP, let's do this intelligent document processing, let's take a picture of a form that's coming in and try to match it to one on the database, you match it against millions of records. If you set the process right, you can begin to ask some questions that narrows that down. That makes it a lot easier to find the right one very quickly. So it's about understanding that broader process. And ultimately in this one, we did bring in IDP, and it's been very valuable for the business.
If you had to tell a founder the first question to ask their team before implementing AI, what would that question be?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of companies now who are asking themselves that question. Klarna in the news and a whole host of others like Salesforce, HP, where they're trying to embed this culture of having everyone in the business be aware of the capabilities of AI, make sure that's being brought into every discussion around problem solving. There's a really common misconception with it where you begin to think AI is your value proposition. If you're a founder and you're selling whatever it is, but if you're a founder, let's say you start up a tech company, it's to do with buying train tickets 10 years ago. The proposition to clients is they come use our platform. We use AI to make it really easy to find the best price. Proposition for clients is we're going to help you find the best train prices at the best and most convenient way. So when founders are talking to the teams, we're trying to embed AI in the teams. I think it's good that they help the business recognize it's something that needs to be considered when you're finding problems and trying to solve them. But you can't let that become confused with saying AI is your value proposition. You still need that really solid understanding of what problem you're solving for the marketplace. They don't care how you solve it. If you can solve a problem with a credible solution, focus on that.
Sometimes AI isn't even the solution, and you should consider that as well.
100%. It's a really important tool in your tool belt to solve problems that come up. You can't confuse that with AI being your value proposition. Unless, of course, you are an AI company, OpenAI. In that case, you can probably say AI is the value proposition.
Definitely. Once the systems are fixed, can you recount the journey of integrating AI? What were the key milestones and how did you navigate obstacles?
There's a lot of different flavors of AI, and people immediately jump to think about ChatGPT and LLMs and generative models, but there's other slants to it as well. So I touched on IDP before, intelligent document processing. There's some really interesting stuff in the data analysis space. Tools like task mining, where it collects a ton of data and uses AI to aggregate and help to find trends, which was previously manual. So when you say AI, it's important to lens what that is. We've helped companies build business management systems, especially process-driven management systems. So processes that describe how you do your core work across your company, and essentially act as your SOPs, your training documents, your audit documents. And we're looking at using AI engines that draw in all that information about the proper way of working and use that to provide controlled advice to the business. Let's say it's about processing a unique type of invoice, draw the information in from a BMS, from SharePoint, from your process management system, and then make a recommendation based on that information to someone. And that's something that we trialed it a little while ago and had mixed results back about a year ago. The AI engines were struggling a little bit. What we've seen since then is when we do try this, you need really strong comprehensive data underpinning it, building a mechanism that flags when the system is using control data and when it's not. And as the tech evolves, it's getting so much better and so much slicker. So I think with any AI solution, there does need to be a recognition of the risk profile that it does bring in. There does need to be a recognition that the tech is changing so quickly. So your solution today might not be the solution, but you still have in a year's time. It might move forward, it might be a step change, it might be something really fantastic and transformative that comes in that time. You need to be aware of that. It's not like you're working with an ERP where you've got a 10-year change horizon. This is something that's got a 6-month change horizon. And you need to make sure that your solutions recognize that and your business is ready to adapt quickly alongside that.
Definitely. So the solution needs to be easily adaptable. And also, it should be created fast enough so that not by the time you've created the solution, it's already changed.
100%, yeah. We're still in this period of move quick. I won't say break things, but yeah, there's a really interesting McKinsey graph about AI opportunities where it looks at both risk profile and the complexity. And depending on how risky it is and the complexity, it depends on the human involvement. And I think for those really high risk points of intervention in heavily regulated industries, really strategically critical moments for an organization. In those points, you can have AI be an accelerator, a tool that advises and researches, but you still need that human in the loop to mitigate those high risk profiles.
Definitely. So reflecting on your experiences, what are some common pitfalls that you've witnessed organizations face when rushing to adopt AI? Can you share a story?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the biggest things I've seen is there's a outsourcing of the strategy behind driving AI to houses that claim to have that expertise, but maybe don't. The company who's made the most from AI so far isn't OpenAI, And it's not Meta or Google or any of those bodies. It's today, I think it's Accenture. They've been doing a lot of strategy work, build work. They're the ones realizing a lot of revenue. Now, obviously, that's going to change. But what I've seen quite a few organizations do is make significant investments in AI strategy and assessments. We're talking 8 figures in the tens of millions of pounds range minimum. And you can spend all day coming up with the macro level strategy. A lot of the most effective AI interventions are at that point focused task level. It's about being able to solve a very specific business problem and building an agent with that specific capability. Like being able to automatically match personnel records, like being able to identify ideal suppliers and vendors for a specific order type, like being able to manage an invoice backlog and mismatches. Specific problems where you can train it and it's got hard confines to the solution are way more effective. The broad AI strategy piece, great. We recognize it's a capability that should be embedded in the organization. Much the same way, being able to manage processes, deliver change, capabilities embedded in the organization. I think that's in a lot of organizations. There's been major AI investments with big consulting houses, but very little to show for it.
So you're saying there's too much strategy rather than specific use cases, small ones that are more like that sees real results.
Yeah. Where there's organizations who aren't specialized in AI, taking on major contracts to implement macro level business changes, and they don't have the capability to actually build an AI bot. They don't have the capability to embed that in the organization. They just sit with the execs and don't engage with the real business to understand problems and point solutions. It can't be just an exercise done in the boardroom. It needs to be done with people across the business getting into the detail.
So can you share a story about how process modeling played a crucial role in ensuring successful AI implementation in one of your projects?
Yeah, I think there's some... So process modeling's got a bit of a reputation. It's been around for a very long time, and it used to be done on stodgy tools. Sometimes when people talk about process modelling, it's seen as something that takes a lot of time. Our process space has been evolving. There's a lot more data now. Get into a view of how things work much more quickly and get into a real view of performance. It's letting off data, not people's opinions. And this evolving process modeling space and process data space is a really good way of getting a foundational understanding of what it is that you're doing in an area. Your process, your performance, where real issues lie. What we did was initially brought in to build an RPA bot to accelerate the invoice mismatches. There's a big backlog of them. We brought in to build an RPA bot to manage this big backlog of invoice mismatches. And we built this bot, but before we did that, we modeled out the entire procure to pay process. The upstream piece, the whole logistics and warehousing piece, and then the back end accounts payable piece. And the issue wasn't just about invoices. It wasn't about being able to match them quickly. It was upstream, it was procurement, it was buyers putting in the wrong fields and missing some really critical data fields that was causing this automated rejection of them and creating this massive backlog. We did the process modeling exercise. We shaped up the MVP, the accounts payable piece. We actually did build the bot because there was a massive backlog we just had to get through. So we did build the bot, and we used the process to really get into the detail of where it's drawing data from, who it talks to, what's the validation cycle, what's the exception cycle. Define all of that in a good degree of detail. When rolling it out, process models and the information that sat behind the descriptions, the ways of working alongside the bot, really useful in explaining its role, making people understand who was supporting, not replacing heads, but supplementing the team and getting rid of this really annoying issue they had of having to manage a massive and growing backlog of invoice mismatches. And also educating the team on how they worked with it, what went in, what went out. So having that process piece is a really good way of helping people to really get their heads around how it's going to affect the business and how they need to work with it.
So this kind of process thinking also applies to newer companies like startups as well. You usually work with larger companies, right? Would you say that this kind of thinking applies to?
Yeah, definitely. I'll take my own company for an example. We've been revising our sales and marketing process, taking it from where it was, which was quite a traditional consulting sales process, to trying to promote other things like content and thought leadership on LinkedIn and a bit of outreach through those channels, and looking at how we manage opportunities and how we help shape those propositions with clients. There were so many ideas on new technology, new approaches, new ideas, new markets. It was a lot of change. What we were struggling with was everyone was having these ideas, and we were trying to foster this innovation culture, let people try new things. What we ended up with was a bit of a jumble. It depended who was contacted, how we managed that sales opportunity. There was a lot of variance. So what we actually ended up drawing out our sales process. What are the points where we're going to have a really fixed process? What are points where we think, yeah, we'll let people do things their own way. We'll vary, we'll test what works and bring in what's best. Identifying change points and being clear on what changed at those points was really strong in being able to get everyone in the business on board with the change, making sure everyone's clear on what's moving and how it is. So whether it's a massive company, a medium company, or a tiny company, there's absolutely value in taking the time to draw out what you do, understand that, and use that as a tool for communicating that across the team.
Definitely. So looking ahead, how do you envision the relationship between process improvement and AI evolving? Can you share a story that highlights this potential?
Yeah, definitely. I've long been a big advocate for, and this perhaps is a little more targeted, bigger businesses. I've long been an advocate for saying there's a lot of different teams in businesses trying to make things better. There's process teams, data intelligence teams, enterprise architects, there's project management, change management, continuous improvement, and a whole host of people trying to make things better. And there can be a lot of crossover. People stand on other people's toes. And sometimes, especially in bigger organizations, this can get quite political. Handover points become battle zones. Things get lost in the mix as well. As I was saying before, procure to pay, there's a breakdown from procurement to warehousing. Similarly, there's a breakdown when it's process people defining process, continuous improvement people defining improvement, PMO people delivering the change. There's handovers and things breaking those handovers.
Yeah.
So I've long been a really big advocate for not having these disparate teams sitting separate, but instead having one change maker function, appropriate executive sponsorship that can then work together to service the rest of the organization. It's one collective, it's a lot of different capabilities, but essentially we're all doing the same thing, which is trying to make things better. I fit perfectly into this. AI isn't a value proposition. It's not a function in and of itself. It's another tool in your tool belt. It helps you mix things up, change things. So whenever you're looking at a business problem, looking at a function, it's not about saying, how can we fit AI into this? It's about saying, what is the business process? Where are the challenges? Where do we know we need to be innovating? Where are our competitors and parallel industries innovating? And having that discussion holistically, not just about AI, but as how do we collectively transform and change. And so AI fits into this process change team and being able to affect change, not just in terms of bringing in a solution, but in bringing in the change around that makes it effective.
It makes change in an organization easier and breaks down boundaries between teams that don't drive organizations forward.
Yeah, all those teams are trying. It's just they're all sitting separate.
Yeah.
And they're all asking for the same people's time, maybe asking the same questions. And it's not the best way of working. If you have it collectively in one team, it's about driving change. Different people, different capabilities. Some data analysts, some DevOps people who can actually do that reactive configuration and system change. Some people managers, change managers who can talk to people and get the business to adopt change. And now these AI evangelists who can come in and very clearly articulate when and where AI does make sense and help to build and develop those solutions. It's one collective team working together to deliver change.
Can you recount a success story where fixing the system first led to a successful AI implementation? And what were the key takeaways from that experience?
Fixing the system first led to a successful AI implementation. Yeah, I talked about the procure to pay example before. The RPA bot, the back-end manager backlog, but we did fix the data upstream piece about data validation. Another really interesting one, specific to larger enterprises in the industrial manufacturing sector, is when you look at major ERP transformations with S4, there's a ton of new features in the platform, AI-enabled features, automation-driven features to make materials management process a little bit easier, a little bit less manual, a little bit more driven by intelligence and data. And when we've been working with organizations doing the process design and preparation for these major ERP programs, some companies just want to carry on doing what they were doing on the old system. On the new system, it's got a slightly shinier interface, just rebadging the old system. But what we really strongly propagate, we help our clients to do, is to not just do that. It's to look at what you can do in that new system. What are the new features? What can you do around business planning, business resourcing? How can you be intelligent with inventory management? How can you use those AI features to make automatic interfaces, requisition hires, requisitions, and automatic POs, so that you minimize the amount of manual work that goes into managing your business. So let's give a real example. If you're looking at an industrial organization, looking at something with heavy machinery, there's a lot of maintenance that needs to be done. Heavy machines, you have regular work orders. And historically, what you do is you work on a planned maintenance cycle. You review something every quarter, every 6 months, every year, whatever it may be. Do this bit of checkup, do this audit work, do this repair work. And what you're seeing in new systems bringing in is that instead of it being planned maintenance, it's predictive maintenance. You have robotic sensors, you have data points that check when the systems are degrading. And we need work instead of a 3-month cycle. It might be 6 months, and then 9 months, and then 2 months. And it's the data and the robotic points are telling you when you actually need to get involved in maintenance. If you carry over what you were doing, it's inefficient. You're checking every 3 months when it might not need it. You might not be checking when it does, bringing in new features. Predictive side, you can be checking on that major drill, manufacturing engine, whatever, as needed, massively cutting down the amount of live needed, increasing the efficacy of your machinery.
Only doing things when required is possible only with AI. Large reduction in labor as well. What are your predictions on this, and how much does it affect the industries you work with?
Yeah, look, it is going to be really disruptive to the way organizations work. There's always been this rolling evolution of technology from when digitalization really came to the fore in the 90s and noughties to the wave of automation we had in the 2010s to now, which is the AI era. There's always new efficiency. Jobs that existed before aren't needed tomorrow. We're already seeing that some of the work and jobs we do are getting replaced by AI features. And there's two lenses to it. And I think AI could have a similar impact where it does make a lot of these jobs redundant. A lot of work does become automated. And I think it's really upon...
Massive retraining is also important. Can you describe a time where you ensured your process improvement initiatives drove lasting change? What strategies did you use and what were the results?
You want your work to have an impact. And to be frank, a lot of the work we used to do, especially earlier in BPMD's existence, was about working with organisations to model processes, to understand the way of working, maybe to define an improvement roadmap. But it was never, the work we did was never realising those improvements. That was left with an organisation to do. And in a lot of cases, a great plan on a piece of paper, but it's doing that and then following that through into actual change. So working with a logistics company, we looked at the order to cash process. And there were lots of different improvement areas, especially kind of handovers between teams. In finance, there were some emerging discrete roles that were needed to manage some interesting quirks they had around specific clients and how those accounts worked, and a whole host of other things. We did the analysis, modeled the process, and came up with the improvement plan, looked at the data points. But then there was a lag. There was a handover to the delivery team, handover to the internal team. Because of competing priorities, it took months before anything started getting going. So we worked with them, we got more involved in that delivery piece and really accelerated it. Got the really solid rules around those departmental handovers and got a mechanism for enforcing those so that people knew what the sales team were going to hand over to the customer service team, were going to hand over to the accounts receivable team, all people to account for what they needed, establish this new role in finance, and set up an order to cash process that was more effective. So it's not okay just to be a process team, and it's not okay just to be a PMO team. And I guess it's not okay to just be an AI team. So linking all of that together to process, change, vision, and carry that through.
No blurring of lines between teams.
The governance models, there's a million and one things that work differently for different organisations. Essentially, my view is you should have a change maker team, a team that's about making the business excellent. And there's a lot of discrete capabilities. Like I said, there's data analysis, enterprise architecture, process modelling, and then the softer side of things on project management, change management, and a whole host of other things, DevOps, IOps, all those kinds of discrete capabilities. But they all need to work together. So we need to be, you can go function by function, support those functions, those plans, realise those plans. There needs to be some continuity in the team. It can't be internal handoffs and handoffs because that'll slow things down. There needs to be continuity of the team working together. Whether it's a central team, a decentralised team, or a hybrid approach, we have some people in the functions who have those capabilities who work with that central team to accelerate and propagate best practice. So all the models can work. I'm a big fan of hybrid with a strong core team. Essentially, it's about making sure the change initiatives are lined up. You're holding people to account for delivering.
So if you had to hire for a change maker team in an organization, what would you be looking for?
Yeah. So one of the things we've been using with a few of our clients is there's a scarcity of process management capability in the market. There's a bit of a scarcity of data intelligence capability, and there's a massive scarcity in the AI market. We've been working with companies who recognize this deficit of skill in the process management and change space, and working with them to find internal candidates, people in the business who show an aptitude for improvement and already know the business, bringing them into the central team and coaching them up, developing process management, the change management, the excellence capabilities in people who already have operational experience. That's something we've seen be massively effective. And bringing in people externally can be really effective. It can be difficult. It's very hit and miss. Sometimes you get fantastic leaders. Sometimes you don't have the capability to drive the change you want. But if you find those people who have really high potential in your business, they don't need to learn your business. They know your business. They need to learn those capabilities, and you can use external sources to build awareness of process, change, and AI. They can be leaders in the business. At a junior level, what I've seen effective is having your change maker teams be one of the graduate programs. So if you recruit from a really good university, something where it's got a strong academic background and the people you bring in are really high, strong capability people, the change maker environment is really good for getting these people producing value for the organization. The work they do can be on new tools, new technologies, really innovative. And that's a really good space for kind of that graduate, high skill, modern skill set, tool set. And B, what you're doing is giving them experience of the organization, not just one function, but across every function, seeing what finance does, procurement, the core business, and getting a feel for not just a single role, a single desk, but the broader way the business works. And C, combining those two, people who are aware of the latest technologies, having people who are aware of the business and the broader context. What you're doing is generating those future leaders for your business. Those people who be absolutely high potential can go into those leadership roles and have that long-term career with an organization where it's not a silo view, it's a cross-business view, but they have that real deep understanding of your organization.
Different lenses, right? The people who are fresh grads and they have the latest tech and just like the freshest knowledge, and then the people who are inside the organization and they've known the business for a long time and they've always had potential to be that change maker.
Absolutely. There's that potential. You've got to realize in your workforce type potential people. And this is a really good role for people to realize that potential.
So if you could share one pivotal story with founders looking to implement AI in their organizations, what would it be? And what key lessons would you want them to take away?
One pivotal story. You can't just say AI is my one tool that solves my problem. You look at your process, upstream and downstream dependencies, people, systems, inputs, outputs, build the broader picture, understand the problem, and then work out if AI is the right solution or is there a more rudimental fix. I've gone on about this procure to pay example, but it's just really indicative of people seeing an issue and immediately solutionizing with AI.
So what do you want to leave for our founders today?
AI is great. It's a really transformative capability, but it's not the only capability. Look at your business, understand where the issue is and fix the issue with AI as an option, but there's some easier fixes as well that you can just get right.
AI alone isn't the solution. It is just a tool. DM exposes what breaks when you skip system design. Now Michael reviews the fix that could save your team from months of rework. Click here to watch this next.